communications consultant and creative writer. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
I'm really happy that you're here with us. And I thought it would be nice to start off with you telling us how you came to arrive in St. John's, Newfoundland, Labrador.
First of all, thank you so much, Lloydetta. It's such an honor to be part of this show. Well, I arrived in Newfoundland in 2018, on a very cold December day with my family. And I came here as a master's student at the Memorial University of Newfoundland. And there had been a considerable gap between my undergraduate and my master's. So I completed my undergrad in 2003. And in 2018, I arrived in Newfoundland with my whole family.
Okay, and what was that experience like for you?
Well, cold and cold. No, it's actually been almost 3 years since we arrived, and these 3 years have just been an amazing transition in our lives. I arrived here with my 2 boys and my husband, and it was quite a turning point because I was fulfilling something that I had been planning to do for a long time, and I had been looking for programs in communications. But of course, after my undergrad, my experience in communications was focused on nonprofit communications. And the field being so vast and diverse, it was hard to find a program that was really specialized for my needs, rather than just a generic public relations or corporate communications program. So once I found out about Memorial University, I found that the Master of Philosophy in the Humanities was just perfectly, it's interdisciplinary, it combines all of my fields of experience and study. So I applied and I got the chance to really pursue this after such a huge, long hiatus, during which time I had 2 kids and started working as a communications professional first, then a consultant and freelancer, and now here I am.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'm glad
so
that
much.
you persevered and got your degree as well coming here. So your choice of Newfoundland and Labrador as a place to come, like what influenced you?
Well, that's a very interesting story, actually. I found out about Newfoundland when I was working at a nonprofit organization called the Sajida Foundation in Dhaka, Bangladesh. And it's a national organization that works with underprivileged communities and underserved communities. And one of the partners for Sajida Foundation is Team Broken Earth, based in Newfoundland. So as part of Sajida Foundation, I had the opportunity to really host or help organize events when Team Broken Earth came over on missions to provide training and support just for Sajida Foundation's work, and that would go directly towards underprivileged communities. And that was my first real contact or interaction with, I would say, a Newfoundland community. Because watching Team Broken Earth in action, and their approach and how they would bring so much compassion on every visit, it was really, really inspiring. So I started to look into Memorial University and the programs, and once I found the program, I thought this is perfect. So that's how I started to learn more about Newfoundland. And once, because I have family in other parts of Canada. And so when we arrived here, the question was, why Newfoundland? Because we didn't know anybody here. Right. But there was such a strong sense of, it was such a welcoming community. Even from before I had arrived, our Honorable Premier, Dr. Andrew Furey, was the founder of Team Broken Earth. Starting from him to the doctors and the nurses, everyone was so supportive of this decision from the onset. Whenever I would speak to them about coming here, it never felt as though I was going to an unknown, unfamiliar place. And they were very welcoming even when we arrived here with my family. And so that's how I got to know about Newfoundland. It's just sort of a stepping stone from one to the next. And
right, and so you've been here and you completed your MPhil program?
Earlier this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I mean, it's always difficult when you're studying as a mother as well, since you have those duties to fulfill.
Absolutely.
Right. So were there any challenges you faced whilst you were here, on arrival or whilst during your studies?
Well, I would say the challenges have always been there. If you think about life with children, and I had my kids. I think my older son is 12, so he was born when I was 28, and then I was 30 when I had my younger one, who is now 9. And I've, working with children has its challenges anywhere in the world. In Bangladesh, those challenges are more pronounced because access to childcare is not a privilege that many can afford. It's not always accessible to everyone. A lot of people depend on their families for childcare support, and that was not, that was an area where I didn't have much help. So, I had to do the best with what I had. And so I wanted to work, and at the same time, I also wanted to take care of my children. And I think I was not ready to make that choice between either one of those two. And so, the challenges, I would say, started right there. It was just, life happening one after the other. Things don't stop for anyone. No. And the whole time I was thinking, my master's, I need to complete my master's. So when we came here, to be honest, after working with small children and going through that process, the master's didn't really seem like a huge challenge at all. No. In fact, it was amazingly great to be a student again.
Right. Yeah.
It was wonderful to be on campus and out of that the 9-to-5 grind and getting back to the house, to the children, school, studies, work. So for me, it felt like a break. It was like I'm a student, and here's my children, and they were going to school, and they transitioned really well. They loved the schooling here, the system here. It's a lot less pressure from the school system we have back in Bangladesh. So they were enjoying everything, extracurricular activities. So for all of us, it was actually a very pivotal moment, I would say. In each of us, my husband and his journey, my journey as a mom, as a writer, and creative writing is something that I aspired to back in college, back when I was that young college student. And then, of course, once I graduated and returned to Bangladesh and got married, had a family, started working, it just sort of never found time to pursue it. So that was another big moment in my life when, once we arrived here and I started doing my master's, I started to think about how I could bring in creative writing into my research project.
Okay.
And so the Master of Philosophy being in the humanities, being interdisciplinary, I was able to, and creative writing is I guess it's not always encouraged by the program, but it like I said, it just happened for me, and I was so grateful that that my professors, the director of the program, they were so supportive. And so that's how I was able to sort of bring in creative writing back into my life. Started doing that as part of my research. And now I am, this year after I graduated, I wanted to take the summer off to complete the novel. It's a fiction based in Bangladesh that I'm currently working on. And it's, it's almost complete. So, those are big goals that are being met.
Wow, well, congratulations even on starting. So now, could we get a sneak preview of what that novel is about? Well,
the novel is, it's based in the lives on the lives of three female characters, three young women who are navigating the political, the economic, social challenges of life in Bangladesh. And it is hard for, Bangladesh is such a diverse community of people. There's so much pluralism. There's so many differences in the way that people practice their faiths, practice their beliefs. So this is something that I started working on when I was 20 years old. And it's really, it really sort of evolved into what it is today.
Okay. So when are you expecting the release to be? I want to make sure that my name is on the list for the first copy.
Absolutely. Honestly, I'm focusing now on completing it. It feels like the last mile is the hardest.
Yes.
But I hope to do that this summer and by the end of the summer. And then we'll take it from there.
Okay. Have you got a publisher yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I don't have a publisher, so that's something that I will be working on next.
Okay.
But you will be the first to know.
Oh, great. Well, I think congratulations are in order, just even getting to the point where it is now. And
Thank you.
I really commend you with 2 children and looking after a home and still finding time to
Thank you so
study,
much.
complete a degree program, master's degree program, as well as write. So you've really done a lot, and for which you should be commended.
Oh, well, that's very nice of you.
Yeah.
It is always a bit awkward to talk about the novel that I'm writing so early, because it's still not complete. Neither is it due for publishing. But like I said, this is one of those things that have been a very important part of my life and my journey growing up as a college student, but that was just sort of unfulfilled. And it's, the point I want to make is that this is such a big part of coming to Newfoundland also. I really feel that this is Newfoundland as an experience. There's the arts and culture here is, the place is so rich. Right. In what it offers creative people, whether it's writers or filmmakers or poets or painters. I feel that this is a place that really nourishes that. And it's been, so once I arrived here, I started reading more books that have been written by Newfoundland authors, and it's just it's amazing as to how little the world knows. I had no idea that there was a place here, this island, that was just brimming with so much possibility and just creative possibility. And it has been such a privilege to be able to experience that firsthand.
Right. Well, thank you so much. Wow, I'm really impressed by all what you've been able to achieve as a wife, a mother, a student, an author. And I'm sure there are great things in store for you. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Lloydetta. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back to Sharing Our Cultures. Joining me now is Laurabel Mba, Fund Development Coordinator with the Canadian Mental Health Association of Newfoundland and Labrador. Welcome to Sharing Our Cultures.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, I'm glad that you're here. Now, we'd like to find out a little bit more about what you do.
So, as of right now, for my professional role, I am the Fund Development Coordinator for the Canadian Mental Health Association. Okay. So with that, my role is to kind of ensure funding for the association so we're able to run our programming within the province, everything from youth programming in terms of mental health to outreach for social development with those people who are currently incarcerated living with mental health and out on the West Coast as well, and dealing with our Indigenous population, as well as helping BIPOC communities within the province.
Oh, wow.
So that's the professional role. And then I happen to sit on the board of the St. John's Women's Council, as well as being part of ARCANL.
All right. What's ARCANL?
ARCANL is the Anti-Racism Coalition of Newfoundland and Labrador. So they work within the province, kind of formulating and promoting anti-racism, whether it's through education, public development, and just general community programming.
Okay. So what is it like for you? Let's say on your daily day?
On my day-to-day, it starts with a 2.5-year-old. So I am the mom to a wonderful little boy named Theo. So it starts with getting him off to daycare, and then it's straight to work. So that is my first day, is kind of looking at where we are in terms of funding proposals, how much funding we've received, how much funding we still need to receive in order to continue to keep our programmings running within the mental health region. And then my evenings are filled with volunteer work. So whether that's with the St. John's Women's Council or with ARC&L, and kind of promoting anti-racism throughout the community.
Okay. So why is that important to you? I mean,
so for me, in terms of ARC&L is really important to me, just as a Black person who happens to live in Newfoundland and Labrador, and as a mom. I want a world where my son doesn't feel different. I want a world where he is treated based on his personality and what he does as a person, not on the color of his skin. And I've happened to live in Newfoundland and Labrador now officially for about 6 years. And as much as it is a welcoming community and people are very open and willing to talk to you, there are still undercurrents of racism within the province. And I don't want that to continue to exist. I want a world where people can show up here and make this wonderful province their home without having to feel out of place for any reason. And then in terms of the Women's Council, women are still treated as a minority, as weird as that happens to be, whether we're talking about pay equity, and the St. John's Women's Council does a lot of work, whether we're dealing with creating safe spaces for women, whether we're dealing with women who happen to be in sex work, women who are escaping violence in the community. So they do a lot of influential and truly beneficial work, and being able to sit on the board and be part of that in any capacity, something I truly enjoy.
So what do you think it's going to take to make the changes here?
I think being informed. So a lot of the province, if it doesn't fully affect them, they don't have to pay attention to things, whether that be racism, women's issues, or mental health. If you aren't informed, you're not able to advocate for change, and we need more people advocating for change. If enough people are concerned about the issues, the political leaders and those who sit at the table to make decisions are able to kind of take the voices that they're hearing and feedback they're getting from their communities and the people who they answer to as a whole, as their shareholders, and bring those voices to the decision table and kind of advocate for the change that people who live in the communities want to see.
So where do you think the most change needs to happen?
I think that's a two-layered question. So I think to affect people's daily lives, things need to happen on a municipal level. So municipal government definitely needs to be involved in their communities, not just those who look like them, but those who don't look like them. So whether we're talking about women, Indigenous, or other BIPOC people, and then when we're talking about people living with mental health issues or mental illness, they need to know what their struggles are. So municipally, to effect change that affects day-to-day people, so like decisions that would affect you or I when we wake up in the morning and we're going out of our doors, that needs to happen on a municipal level. There is things that do need to happen on a provincial level in terms of access to healthcare and laws that are made, and kind of those kind of overarching barriers that people kind of face. Those need to happen on provincial level. And overall, Canada does need some work. I love our country, but there is some work that needs to be done federally. So I think when you see change happening on a municipal level and then it begins to happen on a provincial level, there's now enough of groundswell for federally, for the change to begin to happen.
Okay, and I'm thinking about individuals. Now you've mentioned, federal, provincial, municipal. What about the individual people who live in the same street as you?
I think it's getting to know your neighbors, and not just on a superficial, hey, how are you doing, and all of that, but actually getting to know the people who live on your street. There is a lot of diversity within the city of St. John's. There are a lot of different communities, but as much as actually having that conversation, not just, hey, how's the weather, how's your day, but when people ask, how are you doing, having that comfort to be able to answer honestly, hey, I'm not doing great. And these are the reasons I'm not doing great, whether it be I don't have access to the bare necessities as food, access to food, or access to affordable housing, or whether it's, hey, I'm not doing great, this was my experience recently, and I need help from my community to change that. And I also think in terms of parents educating their children is also something that's very important for that change not just to happen within my generation, but my son's generation. And once it happens in their generation, that's the change that's going to continue to affect the entire province. Because as they grow older, they'll teach their kids and they'll teach their friends. And that's something that continues to build. And then Newfoundland not only becomes known as this wonderful, welcoming place, but that's something that we truly live and that is affected throughout the province.
Right, thanks. That's really important because I know that it is difficult for some of our young people because they are in school, and because you know that China cultures, we involve students who are in schools and they do not see anyone like them within their teachers or principals, and I wonder what effect that would have on them. And
so I can speak personally to that, not growing up in Newfoundland, but growing up in Ontario. It was really, when I first moved to Canada, my family is originally from Nigeria. It was a shock to me that when my family moved to Oakville, there weren't a lot of black people. And I was just I was one of 3 black students in an entire school of 1,500, and I was just kind of like, this is new. Yes, it's a very strange feeling not to see anyone who looks like you within the community. And then when you're learning about things like history and things like that, you become the one voice. And no one wants to be the one voice for an entire population or an entire race. So it's important that teachers educate themselves. So if they do have students from different cultures or different ethnicities, they know enough about those ethnicities themselves that they do not make their student have to educate the class. It's not for the student sitting in your classroom to teach you about their culture. If you truly want to know, do the work yourself, do the research. Google is free and books and libraries do exist. And I think it's important for the education systems to kind of give that to the teachers, give the teachers the support so that when they want to do that for themselves, they have the support, they know where to look, and they're not depending on the student to educate themselves and their classmates.
Right. And I've also thought about the fact that we need more diversity in leadership roles.
We definitely need more diversity. I know with the new immigration policy that was recently released with the Liberal government, where they said they're looking to bring more immigrants, that is a fantastic idea. It's something I would love to see, but I also think it's important that when they do that, they make it a welcoming place, because Newfoundland has, with MUN, there are a lot of international students who do show up in Newfoundland, who do make this place their home for the entirety of their program. But we do have the issue of students leaving. The minute they get their diploma or their degree, they are on the first flight out of here, because as much as the university environment is home, the rest of the city or the rest of the province is not home to them. And we need a way to bridge that experience of university or college or wherever ethnicities are building their own little homes, to expand that into the city and the province as a whole.
Right, because I think it's easier to build your own group within your own racial...
Yes, within your own racial familiarities.
Right,
when you have that, it's easy to find people, whether it's people who look like you or people who speak the same language, people who eat the same foods. It's easy to kind of congregate there and be comfortable there. But when you're trying to step outside into a larger, where you are the minority, whether it be ethnically, language barriers, or for whatever reason you are a minority, it's harder because you're now the odd one out, and then you have to figure out, am I educating because I want them to understand me, or am I educating because I need to survive? And you kind of have to navigate that, and sometimes it's too hard to be the first one to navigate that. It's easier to go where it's already been done. And that's where we kind of sit as a province.
So I know with youth and high school students who are here and have difficulty integrating into the community.
Yes, there is a duality when you're young of you're a different person at home, because there's you don't have to be anything else. You don't have to be this perfect citizen, so to speak. Your faults and your failures and your places where you feel you're lacking are completely accepted, and you can be that person within your own community. But when you step out, you're supposed to be the model citizen, or where you're supposed to take on the attributes of where you find yourself, and you're trying to manage, how much of the old me or the ethnic me do I be, and how much of the new Canadian, Newfoundland me do I be, and where there's this duality in personalities for a lot of young people.
And so what do you feel that, whether it's whatever level of government, federal, provincial, municipal?
I think that one, it's not even government, it's just the community, where they accept people for who they are. So if you're coming in and you're speaking a different language, except that's the language, if that's their first language or their second language, there's no otherness about it. If you don't understand it, that's fine. Figure out a way so that they don't feel like their inability to communicate in a way you understand is a hindrance for them being accepted. So I think it's about people being open and accepting of the differences, and not feeling the need that someone has to assimilate into their own, into the general culture to be accepted.
Yeah, because there's always that difficulty within the minority and the majority culture, right?
It's like, do we assimilate? Do we not assimilate? How much of our ethnicity do we hold on to be accepted and still feel like ourselves? And that's definitely something young people and older people do kind of have to navigate when they're in a place that's so to speak, foreign to who they were originally.
And I think it's important to see that there is value in diversity.
There is a lot of value in diversity. I cannot say that enough. I feel like the world is a better place when you have people from different walks of life who are sitting at that table. It just makes life so much more enriching. If we're going to talk something as simply as food, the world tastes better when you get to try something new. If we're going as deep as social change, the world is better when you know what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes, when you know their struggles, you know the weight they carry, you're more willing to help them share that load.
That's so true. Thank you so much for being with us today.
It's an absolute pleasure. I wouldn't rather be anywhere else.
Right. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you for joining us and sharing our cultures. And thank you to Khadija Rehma and Laurabel Mba for being with us. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Diversity allows us to be empathetic, it allows us to be more accepting, and allows us to learn new skills and overcome barriers.
Comme une des seules personnes chiliennes qui vit ici, personnellement, je crois que la diversité peut grandir plus, mais en même temps, je suis vraiment fière du progrès qu'on a fait en moins de décennies.
Playing soccer brings us together no matter our race, color of skin, or religion.
The value of diversity is that everyone's opinions and input matters to something that affects us all, and the sense of belonging is something that we all strive for.
Diversity is learning from a variety of different people and collaborating to better both each other and the community.
So compared to Toronto, which is a melting pot of cultures, St. John's felt a lot more homogenous, but